Life is a winding road.
Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm diving into the watercolor paper world and how important it is to choose a proper paper for an artist. In today's video, I want to share with you a review of Baohong Academy watercolor paper, and in today's video specifically I will share already the final results of the works that I painted on this kind of paper. Before we start, my name is Ala, I'm a sketch illustrator and watercolorist, and from 2020 I'm an art teacher too. Whether you are a seasoned artist or just initiating an artistic journey, the paper has a huge impact on your final result, and finding a proper paper results slightly difficult at the beginning. But if you are looking this video, I will share with you my thoughts on this specific paper. Baohong watercolor paper is one of the cheapest options of a good proper watercolor paper on the market. If you are looking for a good watercolor paper, I still invite you to go for expensive options, but if you are initiating in watercolors, Baohong can be a good option for you. And now here on this video I will share with you the student grade paper that contains 100% cotton and how it works. So let's explore the features, the performance, and the overall quality of this paper. Now I want to share with you all the works that I did on this watercolor paper. These are not all the works, some of the works I don't have, but I decided to share some of the works, some of the latest works that I did. Just a reminder that this is a Baohong Academy watercolor paper that is made from 100% of cotton. It is 140 lb or 300 GSM. And this watercolor paper is made from cotton. That means that it holds more color and with a perfect water absorption. And the heavyweight watercolor paper is acid-free and chlorine-free, pH neutral and archival. It means that it is durable and it won't change the color of it. It will stay white. It is not a perfect white color, a little bit beige, but it will maintain this color and won't get into yellowish color. This beautiful sketch of mushrooms, I think that this paper is perfect to work with such kind of sketches because it is about working with detail. The colors are working well on this surface. If we're working somewhere, for example, like here with the wet and wet technique, the colors are beautiful and mixing beautifully on this kind of paper. Later on, I decided to paint a portrait on this watercolor paper, and what I found out is that it is my second work actually for doing the portrait. At the first portrait I took the colors and the paper just made the colors darker. Usually when we work in wet on wet technique on other types of paper, the color stay lighter, and when we are working with wet on wet, usually I take more color because I know that once the paper will dry, the color will get lighter. This is not the case. Baohong will make the color to look darker than you even applied, so it's a little bit different. This work, I would say that it is 10 of 10, and it is as well wet and wet technique applied here on this travel sketch on Sydney. And what I like the most is that these colors, this mix of colors of orange and blues, went really well on this kind of paper. The paper was, as you remember from my previous review, the Baohong was a watercolor pad. It means that all the papers were stretched on the pad, and the only way that I could work with wet on wet technique, I had to wet on one side. This work I decided to remove the paper from the pad, and I wetted the work from both sides. So I wetted from the other side and then from this side. And due to the fact that I could move the paper while it was still wet, I could create beautiful transitions from one color to another. For example, this architectural sketch, this works was within the first sketches that I did on this paper, and here I haven't understood the how the colors are mixing on such paper. And somewhere I don't really like how the results went. As well, it is important to say that here I worked with wet on wet technique only on the first side, as well it was summertime, and the colors were drying faster. Some of the lines weren't, some of the colors weren't mixing up well for me. Let's move with this sketch. It is about the autumn in the forest mood. I wanted to create beautiful shapes of this work. I worked a lot with wet and wet. It was autumn time. The paper it stayed wet more time than usually it is during the summertime. But I found out difficult to remove the color. For example, to create the highlights over here of the sun, it took me longer. And as well as you can see, the color is not removable. So this paper is less forgiving if working with watercolors in this way. Then I have these two works, and I would like to mention which are the difference within these works. Here I started on this. This is the first work that I did, and then this is the second one. This work I did on the watercolor pad without removing the paper from the pad, so I wetted it only on one side. And because it was drying too fast, the color mix and the transitions weren't so smoothly, and I saw a lot of details. As well, what I did here in this work later on, because this work was prepared for the Patreon class, so what I did later on after recording is that I washed all the work from with whatever I had here. So the paper was washed, and I started over once the paper was very wet. And once the paper was very wet, I could afford another color paper. So this work, it is just a reminder for me that any outcome can be done to till a good work is clearly seen, because the work that I was recording for Patreon was very different to what you see in it now. And the second attempt to do this work, I already knew how to apply. I used to work with the wet paper on the other side. I removed it from the pad, and I started to mix up the colors. One of the things that I didn't like on this paper is that the granulating color is not having a beautiful effect. It looks like the granulating color is not working on this paper, and it has just too many impurities and too many dots on this kind of paper. And let's move with this sketch that I prepared as well for my Patreon class. Everything went well, but again, when I started to apply a granulating color, it started to be seen more than other colors. Baohong Academy watercolor pad is not the perfect paper to work with granulating color. The same happened here for this Christmas scene. I wanted to paint, but even if I haven't applied the granulating color, it seems that like the paper has a lot of dots. And the most interesting fact is that I haven't wetted the paper from both sides to have these dots to be clearly seen. And I suppose that specifically this paper from whole pad is not one of the prettier. This work I enjoyed doing it. This winter scene as well, I really like it, and I think that this one is the second work after this one that I like how the colors worked on it. Another work that I as well enjoyed. This is the third work like that I like that I have done on this Baohong watercolor paper is this flamingo. And actually, if considering that I have mentioned earlier about these mushrooms, I really like this paper, how it works for this kind of sketches, where you are working with wet on wet technique, but on a very few side of the paper, but mainly you are working with wet and dry technique. Even if this paper is prepared for working with wet and wet technique, I think that this kind of sketches are better seen on this paper. And this work as well was done within the first ones. But after the architectural sketch with Jordan, I have seen that I already have seen how the colors are applied. And here I went with very light colors once I have applied on wet technique. And this is the reason that I have these beautiful colors. So within all the works that I did, I would say that these works I like the most. And as my latest review of this Baohong watercolor paper, I think that if you don't want to pay a lot of money for a good watercolor paper like it is Archie's Fabriano, then this paper can still work. Thank you for joining me in this in-depth review of Baohong watercolor paper. Remember, finding a proper paper is an essential step in your artistic journey. With a good paper, you will have better results, and I invite you to find out more other papers as well and to try more and to see which watercolor paper will work for you. I know that each artist has their own beloved paper that they like to work. In my case, it is Fabriano paper, but obviously I still tried something new and something that I didn't try earlier. I want you to share in the comments below if you have tried this paper and which are your thoughts on it and what do you think about it. I would really like to see your reviews, and if you have tried the professional grade Baohong watercolor paper, please also let me know. I would like to try it and to share my review over here. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more art related content like this. Keep creating and expressing yourself through your artwork. Until next time, happy painting!